Hello and welcome to the ROKER RAPPORT XTRA pod in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. Brett here, and this week I'm joined by Bomber in Gloucester. Bomber, how are you doing?
Hello Brett, yeah, I'm alright mate, not too bad. It's been a little while since I've been on an extra. I've been exclusively on the player rating, so yeah, it's good to make a return.
I know, it might be a refreshing change actually for you this evening, to not have to keep just make loads of notes down and have a load of numbers lined up for people. Yeah. And I've also another person making their debut on the extra. You've been on the ratings a few times. It's Phil Butler in Newcastle. Phil, how you doing?
Very good, even better after the recent result we've just all watched. Like Bomber, good not to have to remember loads of numbers and just enjoy a game of football for a change.
It was nice. So just to sort of break that fourth wall. So we're recording at the moment. It is 9:15 on Tuesday evening. So Peterborough have just lost 3-1 to Blackpool, which puts us in a very, very good position. So we'll take a couple of steps back. So obviously Saturday we drew 1-1 with Lincoln, which wasn't a bad result in the end. Now after this result today, that leaves us played 35 games, 64 points. Peterborough, 36 games, 66 points. Hull, 37 games, 69 points. Phil, how are you feeling about us at the moment? The run-in, can we do it? What are your thoughts right now?
Generally, I think if you'd asked me this at 5 o'clock on Saturday, I would have said might be the playoffs again. The sort of as time's gone on from the game, I'm probably thinking, you know what, we can do it. I think we can finish top two, we can finish first. Yeah, I think we're sort of the informed team. I had a look at a few of the form and things like that, and if you just take the table from Lee Johnson's time as manager, we're top. And I think it's so tight there at the minute that if we're the form team and if we continue this form, we'll be finishing top in 11 games time, I think.
It's 10 games left for us this season, and I suppose, do you remember that Shrewsbury game when we lost? And I've said that, and you're both nodding your heads like nodding dogs there. But Bomb, I'll jump on you. Do you remember that Shrewsbury game when we lost? And it just felt like the world had ended. We're going to be stuck in League One for another season. What was that? 8 weeks ago? Wasn't it 8 weeks? Was it? I suppose.
First week of February it was.
Yeah,
so we're talking 6 weeks ago, probably
6-7 weeks ago, and we're now talking where we're going to finish. Bomber, what are your thoughts at the moment? What we're going to be doing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, mate, I'm still ever the optimist at the moment. I'm still riding on the crest of that wave. So for me, particularly with the results tonight, or with the one Peterborough result, in any case, I'm still confident we're going to win the league. It might be blind optimism, but you look at that league table now, on the assumption that we beat Bristol Rovers, and I know you shouldn't assume, but let's say hypothetically that we do. That Peterborough game all of a sudden isn't a must-win game. It's a you can afford to draw that game because the ball's in our court. We win that game in hand that we've got over Peterborough now, and we leapfrog above them, so we no longer have to beat them. And then Hull, I've never really been that bothered about Hull, and I know we should because their form is the last 5 is comparable to ours. They've won 4 and drawn 1 of their last 5. Which is the same as ours. But because we've always been kind of 5 points behind them with 2 games in hand, I fall into that trap of just presuming that games in hand equals points on the board. So I'm looking at them going,
we all know this, surely.
Yeah. So I'm looking at them going, we won our 2 games in hand. We'll be on 70 points. That's fine. But up until now, I've been concerned about Peterborough because we haven't had a game in hand on them, and we've been 2-3 points behind them all the time. So that Peterborough game for me has turned from a must-win to a just don't lose it. And all of a sudden, I'm now thinking about Hull because like I said, the form is pretty good. But I think we've got the strongest squad going. We've got the strongest run of form. If you branch it out or expand it out longer than those last 5 games, we're going to win the league, mate.
I agree with you. It's funny. I 100% agree with you. And I've been saying it for a couple of weeks, and I know a few of the lads on the pods are saying we're getting promoted, but I do think we're going to go up as champions. I'm confident. And the thing for me, it feels like that the Roy Keane season where, and I think Chris Wynn mentioned the other day, we're like a machine. We're just churning out results all the time. It feels like that now. And bizarrely, I don't still think we've quite hit the real top gear. I know we've got...
No, we've not. Like it's exactly as you said, and as Chris mentioned earlier, we are kind of that machine just chugging along. That real slow kind of coal hauling locomotive that just chugs along but just keeps on moving forward at a slow pace. We've not played particularly well. We've probably had one really good performance. That's probably the Portsmouth one in the last 5, 6, 7 games. But we just keep churning out the results. And as long as we do that, I couldn't really give a toss how we play.
No, so this time of season, it is all about results. And Phil, do you think us obviously not having a game this week is going to really like massively help us now just to recharge batteries, refocus, and go again?
I think massively, yeah. I think we the last 4 or 5 games, like you've both just said, we are sort of chugging along rather than playing some sort of swashbuckling football that perhaps we saw a few weeks before, and then you get a few defeats playing like that, unfortunately. And it's better that we're more consistent, but I think on Saturday especially we did look a bit leggy.
Yep.
And I think it's no surprise after playing on the swamp at Accrington a few days before, then having to go again on the Saturday against a good Lincoln side. I think we do just need a week off to sort of regroup and get going again, and I think hopefully we can come back a bit better on at the weekend.
No, I do think this week this will help us having a bit of a break, get us all self sorted. We've got a few players coming back from injury, which we'll go further into it, in this pod. But let's look ahead at Saturday. Now, Bomber, for yourself, I wanted to go through both your teams first. But one thing I did want to mention, I'm guilty of glossing over him quite often, and that's in goal, where I think Lee Burge has been excellent these last few weeks. For me, had it not been 09, he was my man of the match at Wembley. 4 or 5 good saves, a lot of crosses he sort of kept hold of. I thought he made some excellent saves on Saturday. Bomber, do you think he's like really kind of he stepped it up, but in a quiet fashion?
Yeah, his improvement has kind of gone under the radar because we've seen, the resurgence of, well, not the resurgence, but the emergence of Dion Sanderson and Luca Nine at centre backs. The good stuff that Lee Burge has done has gone, like you say, largely under the radar because we've been too full of praise of 09 and Sanderson, if you can say too full of praise. Obviously, you can't praise them enough. But yeah, Lee Burge deserves just as much credit as those two guys do for the amount of clean sheets that we've kept, for how kind of safe and secure we've looked at the back. And yeah, I think it's right that we do afford him a bit of time just to say fair play to him and well done to him, because it did look like at one point before Christmas that his Sunderland career was kind of dead and buried. We were talking about, bringing Matthews in as the number one, and then Matthews had a couple of ricks. And then we're talking about throwing Patterson in as number one and surpassing them both. So for him to come from that to now us basically, accrediting his fair share of the credit for our recent run of form and our recent run of clean sheets. Fair play to him. He was my man of the match on Saturday. If he hadn't pulled off the couple of saves that he had to do, we lose that game, and then all of a sudden the next couple of weeks becomes a very different prospect. So yeah, fair play to him and full credit.
And Phil, you was nodding there. Are you in full agreement with him at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to be honest, he's been very, very good all season. He's had he did have a little blip before Christmas, but I don't think it was anything major. I think a lot of it came actually a few weeks ago when he was dropped quite weirdly for, I think it was either the Shrewsbury or the MK Dons game, and it was a bit of a surprise. And I think that's when the real sort of conversation came over whether Patterson would get a chance, having him, just mainly because you were surprised to see him dropped. It's surprising that he came straight back in. But I think we were a little bit spoiled by John McLaughlin in his first season. And I think
he was excellent.
And I think the contrast, especially between like Lee Camp and Steele, to John McLaughlin, we sort of thought,
don't bring them up.
We thought we've got sort of Manuel Neuer in goal or something, and that's the level we're expecting. And I think he sort of dropped off last year, and then Burgess sort of, he's arguably been a little bit better this year than McLaughlin was last. And I think he's sort of a high-end League One goalkeeper. I don't think there's much between them. I think if you put him in Hull or Peterborough or any of the top 6, I don't think their performances would drop significantly if you sort of swapped keepers around. I think he's just sort of par for the course of the top 6 in League One.
No, he's doing well. So I just wanted to give him his little moment in the sunshine there. Now, let's talk about the rest of the team then. So one thing, I did this a couple of weeks ago when I went through the team with, it was Malcolm and there were so many combinations and so many possible formations we can play. That I'm going to start you both now getting your formations first, because at one point I think Malk had about 16 players playing for us at one point. So, we've had 4-4-2s, we've had 4-3-3s, we've had 4-2-3-1s, 3-4-3s, 4-2-2-2-2. So Phil, what formation are you going for, like, for Saturday's game?
I'm going to go for a 3-4-1-2 formation.
You're
So
go-
the
Just to
formation
throw another one in there.
yeah, just one more. The formation we finished at Accrington in the second half.
And Bomber, what are you going for?
I'm going for my favourite football manager formation, so 4-2-3-1.
And you're going 4-2-3-1. Right, so just that both equals 10, which is a good start.
Yeah.
So defensively, obviously on Saturday we had McLaughlin, Sanderson, 09, and our new goal scoring superstar McFadzine at the back. McLaughlin is away on international duty. Bomber, I'll start with you then. So who are you going for in your defence?
So my back four will be pretty much as was for the Lincoln game, with the exception of obviously McLaughlin, as you rightly said, he's away. So Max Power for me comes in at right back, and then you've got Sanderson and 09 in the middle, and you can't drop McFadzine after scoring a goal last weekend. So that's my back four. I think there was a lot of talk about, particularly in our groups and on the reaction podcast to the Lincoln one, about Luke and I perhaps coming out now that Bailey Wright looks to be getting back to some sort of fitness. But for me, he's still, at the moment at least, he's still indispensable in there. He all right, he got turned quite easily and was at fault probably for the Lincoln goal. And there's been his performances over the last couple of games haven't been quite up to the standard that we expect. But the 3 games before that, he was man of the match 3 times in a row. And he's taking plaudits over recognised, experienced centre halves. So I wouldn't move him out there. I don't think you need to upset the apple cart. We're still undefeated with those 2 back there. So yeah, don't change it. Bailey Wright will just have to wait for his chance, assuming again that he is fully fit. So that's my back four.
Well, that was one thing about Bailey White, wasn't it? Because they tried to get him back for the final against Tranmere, and apparently he took a little bit of a pull on, a little setback from that. So I think you're right in what you're saying, to be honest, that especially with the running we've got, and there's going to be a lot of games coming up. Now, just looking at the dates of our fixtures, it's like 2nd, 5th, 10th, 13th, 17th, 20th, 24th, 27th. We've got a lot of games in April. So there's no need to rush him straight back. Make sure he's fully fit. And as you said, I think 09, I think again the lad said the other day, he's got credit in the bank from his previous performances. He got turned a bit. It happens. He's not a centre back, but also it happens to centre backs anyway.
Yeah, people calling for him to come out as centre back because he's not a centre back and put him in centre midfield. There will be a time in the season when we need Luke and I to do that, or we need him to fill in at right back, or we need him to, let's say, to play in that centre midfield. He's obviously not going to be dropped. That would be completely out of the question for me to him be dropped from the starting lineup. So if he comes out as centre back, then he goes into centre midfield, and that means that you're dropping one of the centre midfielders who, again, have been pretty much very good across the board.
Yeah.
So you're then unfairly dropping one of those centre midfielders to accommodate Luca 9, who's moving out to accommodate Bailey Wright. So yeah, that back four doesn't change for me, with the exception of Power coming in from McLaughlin.
And then Phil, so what are you going to go for? You've gone for a back 3.
Yeah, I've gone for a back 3, but it's sort of like it's one of those lopsided back 3s, so I'd actually make the same change. I'd probably have Power in for McLaughlin and sort of play in that right centre back position. I'm not sort of sure what formation they're going to play. I know they've changed it a few times in recent weeks, so I think it'd be pretty helpful if we can shift from a 3 or a 4 depending on what they line up with.
I think that is one of the things about Lee Johnson. And I've said it on this pod previously, where it makes our life a lot more difficult trying to sort of pick what we're playing, because we seem to play such a fluid formation all of a sudden, where under Parkinson, it was literally, right, 4-4. So, we had these set players in these set positions, whereas now, as you say, you got Power as a back 3, but quite easily he then sort of moves onto the right-hand side as a wing back. So it's very much so. It is really difficult to do. But so you've gone for Power, Sanderson, and 09. I'll keep with you then, Phil. So for your 4 then, on your left-hand side, are you sort of sticking with McFadzine?
Absolutely, I'm sticking with McFadzine, yeah. I think, well, for the one, just like Bomber said, you can't drop him after he scored a goal, and he's finally finally, after we've sort of slagged him off on these podcasts all season, he's finally found a little bit of form. And I think I've seen someone on the club website where he's actually said something similar, that he's sort of glad he's finally sort of got going. And I mean, it's taken him a while. It's about time, but he has, and to take him out now would be unbelievably harsh for me.
It'd destroy him, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I've just realised then, is this a bit of a thing that's happening, that we slaughtered Charlie Wyke at the start of the season? Not everybody, Bomber. And all of a sudden he's scoring goals. McFadzean gets slaughtered, he's scoring goals. Should we slag somebody else off?
I think we should.
Burge had a bit of criticism. Now he's coming into some very, very good form.
So it's not going to do with Lee Johnson whatsoever.
Doesn't seem to have worked with Lyndon Gooch yet, though.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Then let's go to the centre, sort of your midfield sort of area. So this week we saw a sort of Power, Ledbetter, Winchester sort of middle three. Winchester sort of pushing forward more than the other two. Would you bring Scowen back in? Would you? Are you going to mix it up?
Yeah, I'd almost change it quite a lot. I'd bring Scowen in for Ledbetter, and then I'd have Winchester sort of dropping back into his deeper role. I think he played all right in that position on Saturday. I think he was there to sort of make sure Bridcut couldn't get on the ball too much, and he did, and also to make sure we had more possession, which we did. So he did his job well on Saturday, but I think against sort of 20th in the league, I think he should be playing deeper as we look to attack more.
I do like having Scan and Winchester in the centre myself. As much as I like Ledbetter, he's been a good servant for the club, and I think he offers a lot, in the future in some sort of coaching capacity. Personally, I think, the legs have gone a little bit now. I know he started the season well, but I like to see that. I think it slows a lot down with him, being sort of so deep. Bomber, let's go to your sort of centre two then.
Yeah, so my two are the same. So the two kind of deeper midfielders are Winchester and Scowen. I've said a few times on this podcast that that as much as I love Grant Ledbetter, I don't want to see him start another game for Sunderland. I want to see him coming on with 20 minutes to go or half hour to go when there's a game to kill off or a lead to defend in a big game. Winchester and Scowen, when they've played together, or the more they play together, the more I'm impressed by them. I thought Winchester, he did the job that he was asked to, but he did look a little bit like a fish out of water in that further advanced role. And I agree with what I think it was Chris said on the reaction pod, is that he wants to have as much of the game in front of him as he possibly can, because he's got that range of passing, and he likes to drop in and find those little bits of space that little bit deeper. Obviously, the further forward you go, the more you'll spend with your back to goal, and the less of the attacking area of the pitch you got in front of you. And I think he just struggled with that a little bit, because it does severely restrict your range of passing. And like I said, it's a completely different game playing with your back to goal than facing the opponent's half. So Winchester and Scowen would be my two holders.
Cool. So far, just a quick recap of your teams, those keeping up. Phil's got Power, Sanderson, 09 as a back three. Three of his four across the middle is Scowen, Winchester, McFadzean. So Phil, who's going to be on your right-hand side?
Well, Lyndon Gooch is on my right-hand side. I think it's probably the best position he's played in, apart from that sort of brief period under Parkinson where he played off the striker. I think if you look back to our first season, his best spell was at the start when he played sort of wing back or a very wide right winger. I think that's probably where he showed his best form.
It's always a funny one, Lyndon Gooch, and I've always said it. We still don't quite know what his best position is. I know he's been on the official pod saying he wants to be a striker, he wants to be up front, but as I say, he's not quite nailed down anything yet, has he, Phil? It's a bit of he's got a lot of hustle about him, he gets about a bit, but sometimes that decision making's not always quite there. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think he's sort of turning into a bit of a Duncan Watmore type player, where he sort of, he gets out injured and you go, we're playing through the middle and he'll stretch defences. And then you sort of play him there and it doesn't quite work out. And then you put him wider and he looks good. And then he sort of goes off the boil for a couple of games. And I think he's a bit inconsistent, but I do think he's sort of, like you say, he offers that sort of hustle in the press. And I think
there's definitely something there.
Oh, there is, absolutely. There's a player there. I think he's shown. I mean, when we first got relegated, we were saying sort of Lyndon Gooch is a bit of a cheat code on the right wing. He was sort of just getting past his man, getting crosses in, and we were scoring goals from it. But he's obviously sort of regressed to the mean a bit since then. But, I mean, he's a good part of the squad, and I think his attributes, and I think if you can use them where is appropriate for a given game, I think he sort of will shuffle about a bit similar to 09, I suppose. Sometimes
Yeah.
moved in midfield, sometimes up front.
Bomber, then let's go for your the three behind the
My three in
attacker.
front, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of this, Brett, is working on the assumption that we've got a handful of players back. So I'm going to assume I don't know what the latest is on the injury front and whether people will be available or not. So I'm going a bit hypothetical here. But I would actually have Aidan McGeady central, taking my way out of that wide berth at least to start. But this is on the presumption that Aidan O'Brien isn't fit, and Jordan Jones is. So I'm manipulating people's recovery for my starting lineup. So Aidan McGeady in the centre, and then I've got Jordan Jones and Lyndon Gooch either side of him. If O'Brien is fit, then I move McGeady out wide. Jones goes to the other side. Gooch drops to the bench, and Aidan O'Brien comes in the middle.
Okay.
So we've got as a three left to right. You've got Jones, McGeady, Gooch. If O'Brien's not fit, you've got McGeady, O'Brien, Jones. If he is fit,
I read earlier that I think it's actually Jones won't play again this month. Now,
right?
I'm not sure what to say. It was. I'm not sure how true that is. So I think you might. But O'Brien is likely to be back.
Okay.
So it says this is Tuesday. Come time this pod goes out, it might have completely changed. But you're going to go. It's going to be
both
three
of those
four.
selections has got Jones in them. So if you're saying
Yeah.
Jones isn't going to play for the rest
Yeah, I
of the
think
month,
it is.
you may have to come back to me. So we'll go. I'll tell you what. Then we'll go McGeady, O'Brien, Gooch.
It's going to be three out of those four anyway.
Yeah, we'll split the difference.
Yeah. So you're going for those three.
Yeah.
Yourself then, Phil, you've gone for one behind two attackers. So who have you got?
Yeah, I've got Aid like Bomber. I've got Aidan McGeady in the middle, just behind the two strikers. I think it's not McGeady's best position. I think on paper he seems really good there. I think everyone sort of gets there and goes, "Oh, McGeady in a free role, he'll sort of run the game." And I think he always lacks the space and lacks the sort of one-on-one that he can do with a full-back out wide. But I think, if we want to play this formation against this opposition, I think that's how you get him in. I think you've got to get him in.
It's an interesting one with McGeady because, as you say there, everything about him should say, put him behind the attacker, like you've done there with Spine too. But he does seem to be, his strength seems to be on that left-hand side, cutting in, doing that little feint, and then beating the full back to either whip across or a shot in. So it is an interesting one putting him there. And then I'll stick you, Phil. Who are your two up front?
Yep, up front, the two big lads, Charlie Wyke and Ross Stewart.
And then Bomber, I take yours going for Wyke up front.
Yeah, Chazza up front. I think well, a lot of people have said that he missed having Aidan O'Brien with him to provide that energy and that little bit of foil. And for how good Stewart has been, and he has been good in the flashes that we've seen him. We've not seen him enough, and he's clearly not. I'm assuming he's not up to speed to be starting games because we've only seen him for like a half and a 20 minutes or so. Johnson's obviously building that up, so I don't expect him to start. But obviously he doesn't. There wouldn't be space for him in my formation anyway. Who else could it be other than Charlie Wyke?
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting, especially I say Phil, if you're going for Wyke and Stewart there, it's going to be interesting to see how them two actually pair up, isn't it? I think we obviously saw sort of flashes that how well it could work against Atkinson. The lads, especially when you got like the wingers getting those balls in, two great targets, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, just a sort of little thought about playing the two big strikers. I think they've got Jack Baldwin playing at centre back.
Yeah.
I think we should just sort of float some balls up on his head, to be honest, and tell them to attack it.
Thing is, watch Jack Baldwin have an absolute worldie on.
Oh, he will. You'll score. You'll make some last ditch tackles. I can see it. You'll be like Jack and Bauer that were forward signed.
I was going to say exactly that nickname that appeared for about 3 weeks and then
exactly.
vanished. That'd be an interesting one. So there's your lineups then for Saturday. So Bomber's gone for Power, Sanderson, 09, McFadzean, Scowen, Winchester, and then 3 of the 4 of Jones, McGeady, O'Brien, and Gooch with Wyke up front. And Phil's gone for Power, Sanderson, 09, and then a sort of a midfield 4 of Gooch, Scowen, Winchester, McFadzean, and then McGeady and Wyke Stewart up front. So then, gents, let's look at who we're playing. Bristol Rovers, they are winning a relegation battle. In fact, they've just dropped into the relegation places, having lost 1-0 to Swindon. They're on 34 points, just 2 points off bottom place Rochdale. Form-wise, is pretty shocking. So, including tonight, they've lost 1-0 to Swindon, as I said. They've lost to Plymouth 2-0, Charlton 3-2. They drew 0-0 with Wimbledon. They did beat Accrington Stanley 4-1, but then also lost 2-0 to Hull. We drew them back in September. If you can remember, Burge gave away a penalty in the 3rd minute. Maguire equalised in the 84th from the edge of the box, and then George Dobson getting sent off in about the 96th minute of extra time. And of course, let's not forget our old friend Joey Barton has taken over. So let's look forward to some clickbait articles on how he would get us promoted with all our resources. Bomber, after all that, what are you expecting from the from your local sides this weekend?
Yeah, they are relatively local. I'll be honest, Brett. I don't really know. You know, I see their forms all over the place. They've changed their managers. Their results very recently have been poor, but then, as you've said, they've beaten Accrington just before that, actually. So earlier on in February, they beat Portsmouth. They beat Portsmouth 3-1. But then they've done things like lose to Swindon and Plymouth and drawn with Wimbledon. Also, a few weeks ago, they lost to Charlton, but that was kind of circumstances conspired against, and then I think they had a red card. And so they could be anything. One thing's for certain is that Joey Barton, in his infinite hatred for us, will try and get them up for it. But I'm not sure that, you know, the Bristol Rovers players hate us as much as Joey Barton does. So I'm not sure whether it's going to have that much of an effect. It will obviously be all over the press. I think the main thing is whether or not Joey Barton affects us indirectly rather than the effect he'll have on his own players.
Yeah,
because he could rant and rave in the dressing room before the game and in the training in the week. But what does concern me is that obviously the whole press carousel that's going to happen this week with Joey Barton, he's going to get more press coverage than he probably would because he's going to say some outlandish things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's whether or not that unsettles us as a team and whether it affects Lee Johnson in his decisions and the speeches that he makes pre-game and at half-time. That's the only way I can see him really affecting it, because I mean there's not really been any sort of manager bounce at Bristol Rovers, so you know he's clearly not having that much of an effect from a morale point of view, and you know getting an extra 10-15% out of those players. So the only effect that he can have will be on us indirectly by him gobbing off.
It is a funny one, isn't it, sort of Joe Barton? I think one thing it also will affect the fact that there's no Sunderland fans there for him to play up to. You remember last time when we drew 2-2 with Fleetwood? I think it was Max Power scoring in the last minute, and he's there like tapping his badge and, you know, oh, we're small, you're big, sort of thing. So I think the fact that he's not there to be this pantomime villain that he you know portrays himself to be. I think for a lot of Sunderland fans, we obviously don't like Joe Barton because he's an ex-Newcastle player and he always sort of slags us off and so forth. I'd be annoyed if we lost to a Joe Barton team, if that makes sense. So that's more the only thing about him for me. Phil, you mentioned beforehand that when sort of looking at Joe Barton's team, he doesn't seem to quite know what his actual starting lineup is.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of changed formation. He seems to have played every single formation under the sun. He's played 4 at the back, 3 at the back, 1 strikers, 2 strikers, you know, 3-4-3, 3-4-1-2. What I mean, almost as many formations as we've had trying to guess the team, to be honest.
He must have listened to your podcast a week before.
I know, exactly. I think Joey Barton try and get 16 players on the pitch if he can, to be honest. Maybe he'll come and play centre mid for them. But yeah, so I think he is just trying to work it out. And I think the sort of Bristol Rovers squad, I sort of feel like the last manager that tried to play football, like sort of, I think Rochdale are doing as well. And they sort of tried to change their style of play. Whereas when he was at Fleetwood, it was very much like, you know, 4-4-2, let's get it in the box and just sort of play like you'd expect a Joey Barton team to play.
Grind it out,
yeah. And I think that that's sort of why he seems to be mixing it up, because he's not really got the squad that's got an obvious way of playing. They're probably sort of in transition, and then they've gone back to the old way with half of the new players.
No, so it's going to be it's going to be interesting what sort of team turns up, how sort of motivated they are. What are your predictions for Saturday, Phil? I'll go with you first.
Oh, I'll go 2-0. I fancy us to keep a clean sheet because we've kept absolutely loads.
And Bomber?
Yeah, so mine's not too different. I'll probably go 3-0. The only player really that I can see possibly causing us problems is what's his name, Brandon Hanlon. He's all right. Obviously they've messily missing Johnson Clark Harris, but I can't really see them threatening us, to be fair, given what they're doing at the minute, and they don't really know the best team, the best squad, best formations. So yeah, I'm going to go 3 now.
Good stuff. So both got. Hopefully, after he said all that good stuff about Bird, she does keep a clean sheet this weekend. We have got a couple of questions from Twitter, but before I sort of go to those and chuck them on you, I must say a massive well done to everyone who's got involved with the Sunderland Together virtual tickets. Sunderland supporters have raised over £174,000, which is quite frankly ridiculous. So well done, everyone involved. What a fantastic idea it was. That's helped so many people in Sunderland. And also not forgetting that the Tranmere did their one as well. They raised over 50,000, so over £200,000 raised for charities. Amazing. Hats off to everyone involved in those.
Brilliant.
As I said, I did put a little shout out on Twitter earlier to get some questions, and we have answered some of them along the way actually in this pod. So we had we had a few questions about injuries. Chris Day and Aluasine Bamboy did both ask about injuries. As I put, Jordan Jones, we think is out to the end of the month. Denver Hume, who now, as it's on Tuesday night, apparently played against Gateshead in a friendly today, like a closed door, behind closed doors ones. We've not heard much about it. There is a rumour that something's been started on, ready to go, that it was 3-0. We don't know if that's true or not, to be fair. So that was 3-0 defeat. But apparently Hume was playing for that. And there was also hopefully some minutes for Aidan O'Brien and Benji Kimbioka. Again, we don't know if that's true or not. So hopefully they could be involved somehow. I think maybe it could still be too soon for Hume at this stage. I had a question also from Michael Bowers. How important is it, in your opinion, that we try to ignore the Joe Barton stupidity and just focus on the team we're kind of up against? Now, we've sort of again touched upon that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just try and ignore Joe Barton because he's a dickhead. Anthony Gare, I hope I got his surname right. Oh, Anthony Gare. Guer. Are you Jason Cundy? I think that's one for you, Bomber. No, Anthony, I'm not Jason Cundy. Joe Gorman, Shag, Mario Void, McGeady, Jordan Jones, or Charlie Wyke? Bomber, do you fancy that?
Oh. What was the 3 options?
McGeady, Jordan Jones, or Charlie Wyke?
I'd have to avoid Charlie Wyke because it'd just be really awkward, the amount of slagging off I've done of him the last year or so. Jordan Jones, quite a good looking lad, isn't he?
Yeah,
so we'll marry Aidan McGeady and we'll have a bit of Jordan Jones.
That's a fair one. Phil, do you fancy that question?
No, I'm binning off Jordan Jones. He's only on loan, so he can get back to.
He's going to break my heart.
North of the
border.
border.
Back up to Scotland and break my heart.
Just get through us promoted, lads, and then we can do whatever you want with us. Right. Last question. Mark Koopmans. Good question, this one, actually, Mark. So, thoughts on McGeady not being picked for the Ireland squad? Could that negativity affect him, or is it a reason to ramp up his game even more this Saturday? A middle finger salute to those who didn't pick him. Bomber, what are your thoughts on that? Is it good? Personally, I think it's good that he's not in the Irish team because I think I'd rather him playing for Sunderland.
Yeah.
But
so
I'll let you go from his point of view.
Yeah, from a selfish point of view, yeah, it's good. I mean, I don't really know. Did Aidan McGeady really expect to ever play for Ireland again while he was sat training with the 23s for, or training on his own with Phil Parkinson? Probably not. So he's probably already come to terms with the fact that he probably wouldn't play for Ireland again.
Yeah.
You know, his recent form and his resurgence has sparked those conversations again. But, you know, he's been out of that for such a long time now. I don't think it'll really affect him. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know Aidan McGee. I don't know whether he had aspirations to ever play for Ireland again. But I don't really think it's going to affect him. I don't think he's probably that disappointed by it. He probably kind of like, well, if it happens, great. But if not, you know, he probably wants to play for Sunderland more. If he's going to win something or achieve something between now and the end of his career, it's going to be with Sunderland and not with Ireland. So, you know, he'll probably, I'd like to think, want to do all that he can to help push Sunderland across the finish line. Personally, I don't see it affecting him at all. But like I said, I don't know the man, so.
Phil, you'll also comment on that one.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. I can't see it affecting him at all. I mean, it's not as if they're playing in a major tournament. If they, say if they were going to the Euros and he hadn't been selected, I sort of get why he'd want to go, especially at his stage of his career, sort of like putting the cherry on top of his sort of international career. But I mean, I'd imagine he went to the the last one they qualified for? I mean, I'm not sure, but he seemed to be about the right age where he would have been in the squad for that Euros they qualified for. So he sort of ticked that off. And I mean, I don't think they've scored for about a year and a bit. So to be honest, I'd rather not play for them if I was Ian McGeady. Because if he shouted Callum McFadzean, God knows what he'd do with some of the people in the Irish squad.
Right then, gents, we're done. Bomber, great to have you on board. So it's been a while since you've been on an extra. Nice to see
Yeah,
you.
good to be back on the extra and looking forward to games rather than looking backwards at performances. So yeah, thanks, Brett.
And Phil, thank you very much for coming on board for your first time. It wasn't too painful for you.
Yeah, not too painful. Not as painful as a night with Jordan Jones or Aidan McGeady or Charlie Wyke.
Join us again this weekend, back for another ratings pod. I've been Jason Cundy, apparently, and fuck off Joey Barton.